Welcome to today's coffee talk from Planet Fair. As we do every Friday, we will be talking for 8 minutes over a cup of coffee about the fastest ways to reach Planet Fair. And today we have a guest. My name is Henrike von Platen. I'm talking like every week with my friend
Margrét.
And who is our guest, Margaret?
And with us is Steve Frost, the CEO of Included, and a good friend. I'm proud to be able to call him a friend of mine. We met when we were both, studying in Boston, and somehow we have, come together on this topic of, inclusion and equity in the workplace. And I'm so happy to have you with us to hear your, views on inclusion, because you have been doing inclusion work with organizations way before it became a trend. So I would love to hear from you, how has it been changing over the past decade or so?
Yeah. Margaret, look, lovely to be with you. And hi, Henrike. Hi, Margaret. It's great to be here. Thank you. I've been doing it for a long time, since I had lots of hair. And it's really interesting because, for me, the business case is blindingly obvious, right? It's like people perform better when they can be themselves, right?
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you? And there's all this kind of talk about, why should we do diversity? Why should we do inclusion? Why wouldn't you, right? And we can get into the business case. So for me, it's always been self-evident, based on personal life experience, based on logic, based on commercial. And in the early days, so when we met in the States, when I was at Stonewall, you sometimes felt like a lobbyist because you were kind of meeting quite privileged, smart commercial people, and they were saying why. And you happened to explain, and you felt like a lobbyist. What's been really interesting in recent years is that you no longer feel like a lobbyist. You actually truly feel like a consultant, because people don't know what to do. They now know why, but they don't know how. And so, based on a lot of academic and practitioner experience over many years, you can now say how. 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. These are the things you need to think about, and these are the things you need to prioritize doing. Mm-hmm. So it's been really interesting how it's changed in that sense, and it feels like, wow, now increasingly a tipping point, critical mass of people get it. I always need to get to work.
I love that, because it resonates with me at some very concrete point where I've always been talking over the past, over 10 years now, talking about equal pay, where I came to a point where I said, I'm sick of awareness raising campaigns. And that's exactly that, feeling like a lobbyist, telling everybody, now everybody knows there is a gap. Now we can actually work on closing it. So it's really been like the same issue on these topics. Yeah.
I think that's so important, Henrike, because it's really the framing as well, right? It's like, I think in the past, there's been a lot of almost kind of apologists, like, please, would you consider? Whereas I think now, to take your example, the pay gap. Yeah. I mean, why wouldn't we want equal pay between men and women, or people of different ethnicities? Why wouldn't you want that? Yeah. So I think the focus to frame it like that really just shifts the debate.
Yep.
Yeah. You talked about 1, 2, 3 ABCs. What are some of the 1, 2, 3s and ABCs that companies need to do?
So, health warning on this is that, if I was in academic phase, it'd be like, 1 to 464, right? But I'm trying to kind of make it easy for people, because I think the way we frame it is really critical. And there's a few things. So in terms of the methodology, how do we approach this? The 1, 2, 3 ABC for that is understand, lead, and deliver. And we developed that when I was at the Olympics and Paralympics for the London 2012 Games. And quite simply, understand is why. Why should we care about this? Why do you care about this? And try and reframe it for people in a much more arresting way of what's in it for me, right? Enlightened self-interest. Then lead is about the how. Okay, so if I get the why, how do I proceed? And again, this is not about somebody else, right? It's not gender pay gap is not about women. Gender pay gaps is about all of us, and disproportionately men, actually. So the how is how I lead, how I behave, how I show up, right? And then how we behave, how we show up. And then the deliver is the what. So what do I do? right? Okay, so what do? Do I change the way I run my meeting? Do I make my decisions more transparent? Do I get more feedback? Do I proactively target certain talent? And what's really important about that understand, lead, deliver model is that it's simple, it's memorable, it's actionable. And rather than people just jump to the deliver, right? Because sometimes now people have got the why, they just want to, what do I do? Steve, Margaret, what do I do? And often really smart people come up with quite trite, superficial actions, right? Which don't really do anything. And they're not based on evidence or data. So the understand and lead is really important, because you've got to go through your why and your how before you get to a what that actually makes a difference, rather than it's just, window dressing.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. So you mentioned the Olympics, and when I was preparing to, chat with you this morning, I was thinking, okay, I need to somehow get the Olympics in there. So because I believe the London Olympics were the first Olympics when there was an officer of inclusion, right? Which was you, correct? Yeah. And I think it really changed the games in a way. So can you maybe mention one or two things that stand out from that experience?
Yeah. It was hard, but it was amazing. It's back to that kind of the discussion we were having, right, about the lobbyist to kind of consultant. I think when London won the Games in 2005 and it beat Paris, and Paris presented an amazing bid, very technically excellent, but London presented a bid that talked about diversity and inclusion, right, and inspiring young people around the world. And that was great. But what was the plan to actually execute on that? And so I met lots of wonderful women and men in the organizing committee who would say, Steve, this is really great. I really support what you're trying to do, but I've got to do this, but I've got to do that, but I've got to sell tickets, but I've got to hire people, but I've got to build venues. And it took about 18 months of conversation to say, you know what? This is not a trade-off. Right? It's how you build the venues, how you recruit those people, how you sell those tickets. And when we reframe the fact that diversity inclusion is not a segregated work stream, it's a method. It's a method of how you do what you do. And if it's done well, it should help you do what you do. It should help you sell more tickets, make more money, help you recruit more diverse, brilliant people, help you build more accessible, inclusive venues, right? So that change in mindset from it being intention to being an enabler was the critically important thing that happened. And it happened, I think, in the real intensity of the build-up to the Games, because there's an immovable deadline, right? This is not a theoretical conversation which, we'll pick up next year, Margaret. No. At 8 o'clock on the 27th of July, it's showtime. Yeah. So are we doing it or not? And that was a wonderful focus, I think, to get some stuff done. And so I think, for me, there was millions of highlights. I wrote a book called The Inclusion Imperative, which detailed a lot of the stuff we did. But, things like somebody was worried about, the fact that it fell during Ramadan. We're like, well, one of our Muslim colleagues said, well, let's have Ramadan packs. And we sold Ramadan packs, which people could buy at any time, Muslim or non-Muslim, and, keep in their back pocket for iftar at the end of the day. And actually, we made money on a new product line, right? Or if you think about how people view the sport, right? We had audio description for blind and visually impaired people to understand the sport. It would describe what was going on. But, I can see, and I don't know what's going on at gymnastics. So I could pay to get that too. And you could actually create a new product line there, an inclusive thing. Yeah. So this concept was like, okay. So it became the first time we had diversity inclusion as part of the Games. And then that went into the IOC's kind of, files, and it became then a kind of textbook for future Games. So we just had Tokyo, and a lot of the things at Tokyo were really interesting in terms of the things they did around accessibility and just trying to kind of make this part of business as usual. And now we're working with Paris 24 and working with LA 28. I think it's exciting what they're going to do.
Wow. This is amazing. I don't want to say it, but my cup is empty and the time is over. This is really, I could just listen to you two talking for, I don't know, the next hour. But do you have some last thing that you really want to get out before we sort of say bye and maybe come back on another occasion?
Well, loads. I mean, one day let's have a lot more. Let's have a lot more coffee and drinks going forwards, right? I think that's really important. And but no, I mean, I think the work on pay gaps we can talk about, which is super interesting. The work, but I think, look, this is such a big topic now.
Yeah.
I just hope people pause to reflect, not only on the understand why and the lead and how, but on the what, right? And come up with really profound things, because this is an exciting, positive conversation for everyone, right?
Yep.
I still find some people who are like, oh, you know, that conversation, but actually it can be so enabling and empowering of everybody.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, so true.
And I think therefore, you know, work can be happier, work can be more inclusive, you know, people can get on better, right? You know, there is hope, right? I think if we can remember that, it can just help our day sometimes.
Absolutely, stay positive, like in this topic. I really like that spirit, because that's what takes us forward, and not always all those bad news, but really copy paste the good news. So this very nice spirit, I love it. Margrét, a last word before we close. See you next Friday.
See you next Friday. It was lovely to have you, Steve. Thank you.